Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 331 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight of Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host, as always, he is Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Almost got twisted up there, but salvaged it at the last second. Adnan, exciting time here. We're going to make some irresponsible season predictions here. Technically June now. We started off the predictions in May. Doesn't have quite the same ring to it, but welcome back, Adnan. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well. Irresponsible continued season predictions.
That's right.
We already started with part one last week, and now just like the Falcons, we had our bye week after last week, and now we have to put together these 12 straight games all at once, just like how the Falcons will after week 5 this year.
Yeah, we really kind of set that wasn't intentional necessarily, but we did kind of set that up so you can have the experiences. We're going to have to blitz all of these game predictions, just like the Falcons are going to have to finish out the season. So that'll, of course, be it'll be a marathon run here, but we're going to get through these games. We're going to bring you guys up to speed on sort of where we're sitting now, that the Falcons have kind of made the vast majority of their moves. We could still, like last year, we saw some last-minute moves at the end of training camp where they did bring in some major contributors. But those moves, didn't end up necessarily panning out, but they were major. So there's always the opportunity for the team to make additional moves after this point. They could continue making moves all season, basically. But for today, we are going to be operating under the sort of assumption that this is more or less the team that we're looking at going into the season with here in 2025. So we're going to give you our best shot. And we'll get you guys up to speed on what we picked for the first 5 games as well. And I know Robert Kelly mentioned Eric Robinson. Eric should be here soon. I imagine he's probably stuck in Connecticut traffic. That would be my guess. So we will get Eric in as soon as he's ready. But for now, let me go ahead and get you guys a quick word from our sponsor. And we have a message from George Costanza apparently as well that I will read off here in just a second. Real quick, guys. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing. Unfortunately, it seems like the only positive going on for the Braves is Ronald Acuna Jr.'s return. So, we have that. Not sure how much else. I believe there was a lot of chatter about Spencer Strider's fastball or lack thereof. I'll leave that up to the baseball heads to determine that. If you don't want to get involved with, Braves stuff, you can do NBA Finals, just about to start. Same thing with the NHL Finals. BetOnline, of course, has more ways than ever to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. We keep the dog days this summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything. That includes MLB, of course, but also UFC and boxing, tennis, NFL futures. Whatever you want to bet on, BetOnline's got it and remains your best online source for all your sports wagering information. In between games, you can hit up the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker, blackjack, live slots, all that stuff. Just make sure when you sign up to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to get access to the latest promotions. Go to betonline.ag. The game starts here. All right. So, to recap real quick, while we wait, give Eric a moment to get here. I will give you guys a rundown on our season predictions so far. So we predicted the first 5 games, first 6 weeks. We obviously the Falcons crushed the bye week. Unfortunately, that doesn't count as a win. But so for week 1, all 3 of us, myself, Adnan, and Eric, all predicted a win. So we all had the Falcons starting 1-0. Consequently, we also all had the Falcons losing week 2 at the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. We also all had the Falcons winning in week 3, so 2-1 after 3 weeks. Adnan and I had the Falcons losing to the Commanders in week 4. Eric had the Falcons winning, so that's where we diverged. And then we all had the Falcons falling to the Bills on Monday Night Football in what might be the toughest game on the schedule. And that leaves us week 7. So that's where we'll be kicking off tonight's predictions.
Yep. That Bill game is right after the bye. Feels like that bye may be wasted this season.
That would be unfortunate, right? And yeah, it's not great. I would have preferred to have a little bit of an easier opponent there, but maybe it gives the Falcons a chance in that game that they might not necessarily have had otherwise. But we'll continue to hope that we can get that big dub. And I believe Eric will be joining us momentarily. But real quick, let me get to a word from George Costanza before we can continue with our predictions. George with the $2 says, as an homage to last season, if we don't come out on the first offensive series in week 1 and do it from the pistol, the fans will riot. Okay, let's be honest. I don't think there's any way Atlanta has a worse week 1 showing this season than they did last season. I think you're right. I do think that we're likely to see a quote unquote normal offense to open the year instead of what was a truly bizarre offensive system that we rolled out in week 1 and then promptly never saw again, which is probably for the best. But yeah, I wonder if they. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say it was very stupid, but I am going to hold on to my theory that those slow starts are directly correlated with the starters not playing the preseason. We saw it happen with Arthur Smith. We saw it happen last year with Raheem Morris. I mean, I'd argue the 1 year where the starters actually did get actual run was what the Falcons were. That was what, 2021? And I don't think they started off as poorly that year, but we'll see this year.
Yeah, and we'll see if they change their methodology at all. That'll be a very hot topic as we go into the preseason, whether or not we'll actually see any of these starters. I know probably the Falcons got, they lost both DeMarco Hellams and Braylon Trice for the season in the preseason last year. So, I'm not holding my breath thinking that we'll see more preseason usage this year, but there's benefits and there are downsides. And the Falcons, of course, seem to be erring on the side of caution under Raheem Morris, but we do only have one sample size of that, so maybe it could change. We'll see. All right, so Adnan, let's talk a little bit. We will get this rolling. I believe Eric has said he will be here soon, so we can go ahead and get the ball rolling here with Week 7, which is another primetime game, back-to-back primetime games. This will be the only time all season, which is funny to say, but it's the only time all season the Falcons will have back-to-back primetime games. They'll go from Monday Night Football to Sunday Night Football at the 49ers in Week 7. This one kind of reminds me of the Vikings game where it's sort of like we don't exactly know what to expect from the 49ers in 2025 because this was a team that was well below expectations last year, but everyone still kind of remembers that this team has been a juggernaut in years past and could get back there if they were to hit on a couple of things here and there.
Yeah. Also, before we get into it, I would like to scratch my comment. 2021 was Arthur Smith's first year.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah. We did not play the starters that year either.
Yeah.
But 49ers game, I think, is one of the more underrated, difficult games on this schedule. I think the 49ers suffered a very, very bad hand last year with all of the injuries. I mean, we saw it. Christian McCaffrey had that calf injury that just lingered from training camp all the way into the season. If anyone had the number 1 overall pick in fantasy football, you probably felt that, particularly because Kyle Shanahan he completely downplayed it. And it kind of, I don't know, if the Falcons got fined for the whole Bijan Robinson thing a couple of years ago, I have no idea why the NFL didn't go after the 49ers at all for that. Because if you heard it, you thought that he was playing week 1, and then he just missed, 8-9 games. And then when he came back, it was, he wasn't really exactly the same. He did end up coming back. Brandon Ayuk went down to a season-ending injury. They had, I think Nick Bosa went down to an injury later on. They had a bunch of injuries on defense. I do think that this 49ers team is closer to that team that we saw 2 years ago that went to the Super Bowl versus the team we saw last year, even though they did lose some really, impact sort of free agents. But, Fred Warner is still there. Nick Bosa is still there. Christian McCaffrey, if he's back to being the way he was a couple years ago, that they're very scary. I know they lost Deebo Samuel. They brought back, they extended Brock Purdy to, I think, the richest contract in NFL history until the next quarterback re-signs. This, I think, is going to be difficult. Going to San Francisco on the West Coast, just the logistics of it as well. You just had a Monday Night Football game against the Buffalo Bills, which, is a very, very difficult spot in the schedule. And then it takes you into an even more difficult spot with one fewer day of rest, going all the way out to the West Coast. I don't know. Like I'm going with a loss on this one as well. It would be my third straight defeat for the Falcons. I think at this point we would be panicking a little bit. The fan base will be panicking a little bit. I don't think that we should, just because these 3 games are just, they're just it's a brutal 3-game stretch for anyone in the NFL. I just don't think the Falcons have the horses for this San Francisco game, especially when you combine it with the unfavorable logistics. And I have San Fran walking out of this one a winner.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think just the sort of logistics of the trip to San Francisco, it's always hard to go play on the West Coast when you're an East Coast team. It's a primetime game. That 49ers stadium is a tough place to play. The 49ers are going to be better than last year. Like, they were really injury blasted, and that team is just not really bad. Like, every once in a while, they'll have one of these years where they have a bunch of injuries and things just don't go well for them. But I think on the whole, that team is really well coached, and they're getting Robert Saleh back, which last time he was there, they were like a Super Bowl contending defense, and they made some interesting moves in the offseason to try to shore up their run defense, which was like their biggest issue. And I think it's a tall hill to climb for Atlanta to go on the road and win a primetime game in San Francisco. I think that's just going to be a tall ask for most teams this year. And again, like Adnan said, now at this point, both of us will have predicted sort of 3 straight losses, and we're probably getting some level of panic at this point, which makes sense. But, thankfully, the next stretch of games maybe will provide some sort of reprieve. So we'll get to that.
And this is where this is why I was saying it's so important to start out 2-1, if not 3-0, because if you start out 1-2 going into these 3 games, then the season can really fall off the rails very quickly. Because imagine going 1-2, let's say you lose to the Bucs and the Vikings, you beat the Panthers. If you're sitting at 1-5, no matter what the context of the schedule is, that's a really difficult hole to dig out of. And then, we're talking about possibly team morale being shot. Fan morale is definitely going to be shot if you're on it. Fan morale is going to be shot if you're 2-4. I know this fan base. I am a part of this fan base. 1-5 would be very, very difficult unless you can really surprise one of these 3 teams, because I think the Falcons are going to be underdogs. Probably deserved underdogs in each of these 3 games.
Yeah. And, there's obviously, we're trying to be impartial with these predictions to produce, a relatively, reasonable prediction. Like, neither one of us is going to go off the rails and predict some kind of crazy, 14-win season. Even if we wanted to do that, I think that, there's not really any justification for that. So I don't know why you guys would tune in. You could see a 14-0 prediction or whatever, anywhere. And welcome in, Eric. Hope you're doing okay. We'll get to you in just 1 second. I'll finish my thought here real quick. But yeah, it's a tough game. I just think it's a lot to ask, especially this stretch. It's a difficult stretch. But Eric, welcome in. Hope you're doing good. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm having some camera issues at the moment, but
I figured it was either that or some actual crazy NFL news had dropped that I needed to refresh Twitter for, and they wouldn't let you leave the building. But yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't that one. So yeah.
no, I think I might need to take my laptop in tomorrow. So
that's okay.
People check it.
We can have you we can have you reporting from the land of darkness. That's okay. Dave does that sometimes. It's fine. No, it's okay. Half of our viewers watch the podcast anyway. Listen to the podcast, so they won't even know. If I didn't say anything right now, they probably wouldn't even know. But you got here at the perfect time, because we just finished talking about the next game on the schedule in the 49ers Sunday Night Football matchup, and this is a great opportunity for you to let the people know what you think about this particular
Oh,
matchup.
man. I kind of feel the same way I felt about the Bills matchup, which I gave Buffalo the win in that situation. And I think I kind of sort of just wanted to see where the team was in that particular matchup. It's tough to think that even though a team may have added a considerable amount of talent in an offseason, it's tough to gauge whether or not they're good enough to play with the elite. So to sit here and for us, for the three of us to sit here and say, yeah, they're ready to compete with the Niners, they're ready to compete with the Bills, they're ready to compete with whoever, like it's tough for us to say. So we kind of sort of just have to see. So that's how I look at it in this particular matchup. We don't bode well on the road in San Fran. Even the one win that we did have in recent years, it came on a game-winning catch by Julio at on the final drive of the game. So I'm going to give the Niners the win here, and I think I think this is definitely going to be another measuring stick for this team. Can this young team find a way to make plays and stay with the elite of the elite? I know some people feel however they feel about the Niners because of Shanahan and all those type of things. But look, this is a well-coached team. Last year, I'm looking at that as just saying injuries and distractions in the offseason led them to having the season that they did. If they're healthy and they're ready to go, the Niners are going to be in the conversation. So in this situation here, I'm going to give the dub to the Niners here.
Yeah. So we're all in agreement on this one. That this is just predictions, guys. None of us are saying the Falcons can't possibly beat the 49ers or any of these teams, but we're trying to produce, the Falcons aren't going to win every game, right? That's what we were saying before Eric got here. So we have to predict some losses. Just, bear with us here. We're trying to you guys, if you've watched the Falcons, you understand, like, we're trying to predict, like, reasonable losses, but like the Falcons are probably just going to drop some of these games that they really should win, and maybe they'll win some that they should lose, and it'll work out. But just remember, like, that crazy stuff happens in the NFL routinely. So
collectively, we felt the same way about the Chiefs game last year.
Yeah,
like, we didn't really mark it as a dub. We just kind of sort of just wanted to see how good the team actually was.
Yeah.
So
and we did see a good performance, I think. So
we did.
Yeah. All right. So week 8. The Dolphins game, and I'll let you take the lead on this one, Eric. This is at home versus the Dolphins in week 8. So the Falcons have a slightly shortened week because it's coming off Sunday Night Football, but not something that's really super measurable. How are you feeling about this one? The Dolphins are kind of a wild card team at this point as well.
Here is where I think they get back to their winning ways. And I think given the predictions that I have for the rest of the season, I think this is where the critical stretch starts. And I think this is where we start to see this team be elevated across the board. I look at the Dolphins right now. I don't want to say they're a train wreck, but they're going in that direction right now. There are just certain things that you see from certain teams at times, and you look at that and you say, you know what? These are the ingredients of a team that's kind of sort of falling apart. Star receiver. Literally the week after the regular season ended, you started hearing rumors about Tyreek saying he may consider moving on elsewhere. You have that. You have your best defensive player in Jalen Ramsey, who has been in trade rumors pretty much all spring, and I think is probably going to get done. I think he's played his last game in Miami. It's just a matter of where he's going to suit up next year. This team lost Calais Campbell. This team had injuries with Jalen Phillips. They had injuries with Bradley Chubb. They still have not fixed their cornerback room right now. This is the Dolphins team that I think on paper they may have talent, but I don't think the record is going to show that. I honestly feel within myself the Dolphins are going to be in last place in the AFC East.
I could see it, and like you said, that team feels like they're right on the precipice of like a reset, and I feel like unlike the Saints, they're probably just going to bite the bullet here because, like, as much as I would love Tua to keep playing, I think he's an exciting quarterback that's really fun to watch. Mm-hmm. He's one concussion away now from career over, right? And he's not particularly good at avoiding concussions either. That's just not really He's just the way it's kind of just hardwired into him. He just plays hard, and like there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But if you've already had like 4 concussions, there's only so much you can be expected to take. And I think
I remember last year after he threw a pick, I think it was on like a primetime game. He tried to dive head first into like that tackle. Yeah, and I mean he got the tackle, but it's like, dude, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, didn't he get almost get kneed in the head with that?
Yeah,
like that.
Just his head. I think it like got him with the shin or something. And well, if I was Mike McDaniel, I would have been livid.
Yeah, because that's your season on a play that it's like, look, it's like sure, if you can make a clean tackle, like go for it, but like otherwise, like dude, it's just not your job. Like don't do it. And unfortunately, now we're in a situation where like that team is one play away from disaster, and to some extent, like every team with a good quarterback is. But with the Dolphins, it's like that risk is for like an injury that might keep someone out for a few weeks for any other team is like career ending for the Dolphins. So I think they're going to operate under the assumption that Tua is not likely to be the long-term quarterback anymore and possibly do a roster reset. And like one of their best secondary players in Jalen Ramsey is not going to be there more than another week or two. Right. So they're going to take, a loss there. This is just sort of a reset for them. And I don't think the team's going to be a train wreck, but I think at this point, like Tua might not even be playing. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I've got this as a win as well.
It's a dub for me.
Yeah, Adnan, what you thinking the same thing here?
I think this is one of those games where the crossroads begins, and I mean, right now I'm sitting at 2-4, so the Falcons better start. They better start racking up some wins right now. And this is one you're playing at home. Look, the Dolphins last year was so weird because the Dolphins have these, gaudy names and these like, explosive players. And we went into it like, all right, Mike McDaniel's the offensive guy. And last year they were really carried by their defense to, the wins they were carried toward. They were a top 5 overall defense, a top 10 scoring defense. Zach Sealer had double-digit sacks, double-digit tackles for loss. But, like Eric said, you're in danger of probably being without Jalen Ramsey. Who knows? Maybe Jalen Ramsey does play in this game, but, on the other side against the Dolphins. That's a major TBD probably for August right there. But, it's Tyreek Hill. He is completely attached to Tua, and we saw it last year, but it almost felt like we saw him lose a little bit of a step even after Tua came back. Age is creeping up. He is someone that's relying on speed more than most wide receivers. Jalen Waddle's very good. They may be without Jonnu Smith, who was their only Pro Bowler last year. Jonnu could be in Pittsburgh at this point with Arthur Smith. So I think just, the sort of Tua regression, and I know a lot of that is to do with the concussions and with the injury history. I think it's sort of turned the Dolphins into a team that we're looking at a lot differently now versus the way we looked at them going into last season. And with this being a home game, I think the Falcons better get back on track, and I think they do get back on track and end their 3-game losing skid on my, personal predictions.
Yeah. So we all got this being a get back on track game here for the Falcons in Week 8, 3 dubs down the line. Week 9 at the Patriots. Patriots, one of the least, winning teams, obviously, in football last year, but they do have Drake May, who really turned it on down the stretch. They have some intriguing pieces. I think they have a really good coach in Mike Vrabel. This team could be a bounce back candidate. I do think that this team is still far away, especially offensively, and the defense was kind of disappointing relative to expectations as well. I do like Drake May, and I think that offense will have some life to it, but I think this is another one where the Falcons come away with the win and start kind of righting the ship after, like Adnan and I both had the team starting 2-4. Now, going into Week 8 or Week 9, they're able to sort of right the ship a little bit, get back to 500 here, going to 4-4. That's what I have so far. Adnan, you feel similarly at this point?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the Patriots are going to be a bit briskier this year than what most give them credit for. I really like Mike Vrabel. I really wanted Mike Vrabel when the Falcons fired Arthur Smith. I think he's a great head coach, and I think he was done pretty unfairly in Tennessee. And I think the Titans are sort of paying for it now. It'll be a fun matchup between Drake May and Michael Penix, two guys who both won the top 10 in their respective same draft class. And, they obviously added Stephon Diggs. They have, a bunch of, sort of average wide receivers over there. Keyshawn Boutte, Jalen Polk, Kendrick Bourne, and I guess they're just sort of hoping one of those guys arises.
Stephon Diggs.
Yeah,
partying. Oh, you did. Yeah, that was the first name you said. Sorry, no, I was going to mention his party down. Yeah,
it's going to be Diggs, and I'm sure they're like hoping one of those guys like elevates that like wide receiver too. I really like Christian Gonzalez on defense, but overall, I just don't think they have the talent yet. I think the Patriots are going to be a bit more dangerous maybe a couple of years from now, but I think right now, I mean, last year their defense was just a hair ahead of Atlanta's in overall defense, and Atlanta's defense wasn't super good. I think this will be another one of those where we're like, thank God the schedule is lightening up a little bit after Miami, and I think they do go into New England and win what would be their second road win of the season so far, and that would bring me back to 500 at this point.
Yep. And Eric, how are you feeling about Week 9 against the Patriots?
I think the Patriots are going to be better than a lot of people expected. I'm not going to go as far and pick them to make the playoffs. However, as I mentioned previously with the Dolphins matchup, like I think the Dolphins could very well be in the cellar in the AFC East this year, and I think the Patriots could be a team that could kind of sort of play a lot better football than they do. I agree with Adnan that the offense still has some ways to go, but I do like Drake May. If you guys recall last year, I was a Drake May fan coming out. I wouldn't have minded Drake May being a Falcon by any means. I do like what he has there in place. I do like Vrabel a lot. Vrabel is another candidate that I was really high on going into the offseason last year. I do think they have some pieces offensively. Stephon Diggs, I think a lot of their offensive success this year is really going to hinge more on what Stephon Diggs is able to give him, because if he's able to kind of sort of find Buffalo Stephon Diggs, like they're going to be able to. I'm not sitting here saying they're going to be in some shootouts and they're going to be able to outscore some teams, but they'll probably give some teams, a sweat or two, to be honest with you. So I think Demario Davis was a guy last year also that they relied on a little bit more than expected as a big playmaker. But with having Stephon Diggs there, I think it kind of sort of eases him in a little bit more. Like I said, I think this team is going to be better than a lot of people think. I think this team, the defense is probably going to be the strength of this team. And they got some names over there, man. They picked up Milton Williams this offseason. You already had Christian Gonzalez. I think Jabril Peppers, when he's been healthy, he's been playing solid football for them in New England. You just didn't notice it because the Patriots have not been good the last couple of years. I'm giving the Falcons the win here, but I don't think it'll be an easy one. I think they'll have to scrap a little bit for this win, not to mention all the pre-game BS that we're going to have to go through with the
This game will be more traumatizing with the pre-show than anything else, I think. So
every member on the Falcons except Jake Matthews is going to be like, we don't care. Yeah. Like, we were not there. So whatever. But they're still going to hear it. It's still going to happen.
Yeah. It'll happen.
I wouldn't even be surprised if NFL Live tells me to cut a 28-3 stamp that week.
Yep.
Yeah. That would be so lovely. Thanks, guys.
You'll be like, no, I'm out. I'm done.
Like, don't do
I'm
that
walking
to me.
away now.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not doing it.
I got my MVP award. I'm done.
Right,
I'm not doing 28-3 anymore. Yeah, it's too much.
But yeah, I'm giving the Falcons the win here, but I don't think it'll be an easy one by any means.
No, I think it's gonna be a better team than expected. I agree with you there, and we'll see how that sort of plays out. And it's a road game too. It's never easy to go on the road and win in the NFL. But this is one of those games they probably have to find a way to do so. All right,
That is October, right?
what's that?
That it is October, right?
I think
I
that
think
is
it's
technically
okay.
October at that point. Yeah. So
So Kevin, you and I being familiar with the northeastern weather up here, let's hope there's not snowfall that time of the year.
yeah, probably
Definitely,
not. Probably not in New England, but it's possible. Low
it's
chance, but
possible.
possible.
It
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is. It is. So
It's possible.
let's be mindful of that as well.
Yeah, that is something to keep in mind. That's good. All right, we got a couple from George Costanza here I'll get to before we get to week 10, which is the Berlin game. We got George with the $2 saying specifically about the Bills game. For some reason, the Falcons historically can't figure out somebody like Taysom Hill, who's just a one-trick pony. So how would we expect him to contain Josh Allen? Wouldn't be shocked that game is a bloodbath. Yeah, I mean, that game could be a bloodbath for many reasons. Josh Allen could be a big one for sure. And then George says, in terms of his overall season predictions, I think the Falcons are probably going to be one of those Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde teams. They'll just be inexplicably blasted in some games where they look like an XFL team, and then they're going to just blast other teams randomly, like the Niners, where then everyone will talk about them as a Super Bowl contender. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of like when the Falcons have been better or playing well. That's kind of what they did last year, right? They just like beat the Eagles. They're one of 3 teams to beat the Eagles all year, and then just lost, and then they, couldn't score a touchdown against the Saints, right? So
Well, they were never really blasted at any point last year. Like, even in their losses, they were still
the Vikings game, maybe.
I mean, that was a one-score game at halftime. It got away.
Yeah.
When I hear blasted, I mean like the first drive of the game or the first quarter of the game, they're down 2 scores, and it's like, okay, guys, this was fun.
Yeah.
But they, like, even in that Vikings game, they made it competitive that first half. And it was still a 1-score game in the third quarter. It just got away from in the fourth.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we can see
the Broncos game.
That was the one. Yeah, the Broncos game. Yeah.
That was embarrassing.
That one was that one was tough.
I'll give you that.
Yeah. But yeah, Colts in Berlin. The Colts are another one of those teams where we don't know who the quarterback's going to be yet. I mean, I'm sure the Colts would love for Anthony Richardson to be the quarterback, but I'm not sure how many people. It's probably going to be Daniel Jones, right? So
it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. They're going to be bad.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think so. So this one might not take very long to cover, but yeah, I do think the Falcons go to Berlin, get the win here. I do think, I think this is the time of year where the schedule is a little bit lighter, but also I think this is sort of the Falcons will be kind of battle tested at this point. They've done 3 primetime games against 2 major contenders in the Vikings and the Bills, and then the 49ers, who are probably going to be back to contender status. They'll play the Commanders. I just think like at this point they'll kind of be like, okay, we can handle some of these lesser quote unquote teams, like not the biggest contenders. We're comfortable sort of now playing at this level of football, and I think they'll maybe be hitting their stride right now. And I have them sort of getting into a 3-game win streak now against the Colts in Berlin. You feel sort of the same way, Eric, it sounds like.
Yeah, and to your point, especially if those Bills and Niners games go how we feel they may go, where it's like they'll probably lose, but it may be like a 1-possession game. Like it's just like last year. Like they didn't really hang their heads when losing to the Chiefs. They just continued to press forward, and they got to 6-3 at a certain point in the season. So yeah, the Colts game here, I think it's a dub. This Colts team is. It's hard to really describe them. They're at a funky crossroad right now, man, because if Daniel Jones wins that job, what does that say about Anthony? That says everything about Anthony Richardson. If he comes in and relinquishes that role to Daniel Jones of all quarterbacks, and this is the team last year that for most of the year, they struggled in the passing game, struggled trying to find some type of consistency. I think a guy like Josh Downs can be an asset for him going forward. Michael Pittman has to stay healthy. Of course, we'll see what we get out of A.D. Mitchell in year 2. But I don't – the pieces that they have together, even with the additions that they made this offseason, I'm not necessarily sold on them in terms of a roster overall. I like what they have at edge with Latu and JT Tuimoloau. That's something to keep your eye on. DeForest Buckner is as solid as they come, but I think this is a dub here against a Colts team that I think they're definitely more talented than.
Yeah. Adnan, how are you feeling about this Berlin matchup?
I like that it's in Berlin, because I mean, one, it gives the Falcons, that standalone game. It lets us, get up early. Well, early 9:30 on the East Coast, probably a bit way too early on the West Coast.
Yeah,
that is
6:30 in California. Lets us, wake up, have some breakfast, and watch the Falcons. Probably, hopefully, beat a team that they're better than. It'll probably go better than that Jags London game that happened in the Toy Story room a couple years ago. But one of the reasons why I like it that it's in Berlin is because it sort of decreases the chances of a letdown. Because you are in Berlin, you are like there's it is a standalone game. There's a lot, that crowd in Germany is always fantastic, and I feel like the players are really gonna sort of get up for this game. A lot of them are playing in Europe for the first time. Some of them are probably going to Europe for the first time, and this is one of those games where if it was just a regular game in Indianapolis, then you're sort of scared of maybe it's a letdown after maybe a couple wins in a row where they're sort of feeling themselves a little bit too much. We've seen that happen with Falcons teams in the past. But overall, the Colts, I mean, last year that defense was horrific. Anthony Richardson, so far, I mean, he was the number 3 overall pick. And the biggest story of him in the NFL was him checking himself out of that game last year and not making the headlines on ESPN for the next week.
At least he was honest about it.
Yeah, he wasn't ready. Yes, I was like, I can't do this right now. Okay,
sorry.
Yeah, I mean, on it, I think it was overblown. He checked himself out for a play, but that's neither here nor there. But quarterback position, Richardson, Daniel Jones, I don't think either of those guys are very good. Richardson had more picks than touchdowns last year. I think that was a bigger issue for him than checking himself out of that play. Shut down Jonathan Taylor. This is a one-trick pony offense. Lock in on the run. If you can slow down Jonathan Taylor, he's the head of the snake. Everyone else should fall in line behind him. I think this is one of those games where the Falcons should win it by a couple of scores. And, yeah, at that point, we'll be rolling.
Yeah, I think so. So I'm hoping that we will achieve this, and this will mean if this goes this route that all 3 of us at this point have the Falcons with a winning record going into Week 10. For Eric, they will have never actually lost the winning record. They will have gotten to 500 for 1 week in Week 7, but will have stayed at 500 or above the whole time. For Adnan and I, the Falcons did dip below 500, but as of now, they will be back to a winning record as for the first time since Week 3. So, moving on to Week 11, this is at home versus the Panthers. And again, this is one of those division games you have to win. Yes, I had the Falcons beating the Panthers on the road early in the season, but I still think at home you should be expecting to beat this Panthers team. There's something about the Panthers. I usually think of the Panthers as the little brother. That's there's some rivalry going on, and we sort of argue and fight and whatnot, but it's not that bad. But have you guys, the Panthers fans seem so antagonistic this year. I don't know what got into the water there in Carolina where they're just trying. Yeah.
Rivalry. I use that term. It's the Panthers. To me, there's only one real rival in the NFC South, and it's the Saints. I don't look at the Panthers as a rival. They're a foe, not a rival. But for some reason, this one season finale game has them on the precipice of making a playoff run, a playoff push now. Okay, all right, whatever. As you mentioned, just get the win. This is one of these games that we've seen plenty of times in the past where we know they're clearly better than this team, and to make a statement, you go out there, you handle business, you come back from Germany, and you take out the belt, B2A, you know what I'm saying? And you move on to next week.
Yeah, that would be nice to see that in a football context against the Panthers.
Absolutely.
I agree. Adnan, you feel in the same way? The Falcons just take care of business here at home against the Panthers in Week 11. I'm sure if any Panthers fans watch, they're going to be very triggered. But
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel like they're only sort of talking now. Like I said last week, they're talking now because it's the off season and you can talk without any like sort of repercussions of your team losing the next week. The Panthers, they've been irrelevant since Cam Newton. And I mean, I get it. The Falcons have also been missing the playoffs the last few years, but at least the Falcons have been there in those like division races. The Panthers have just sort of been in the cellar for, you know, the majority of that time. And I guess their fan base is just seeing this as sort of an opportunity to sort of pull themselves into some relevance and trying to, you know, talk their team up and maybe even manifest their way into an actual season where they win more than 5 games for once. But, you know, I'm not a believer in the Panthers. I'm not a believer in Bryce Young. I think this is one of those games where you cannot have a letdown. You absolutely cannot have a letdown coming back home. And I would hope that this is where the coaching staff needs to sort of make their money. And this is where you sort of need to motivate the team, you know, coming back from a long trip to Europe, where, you know, there are probably going to be many festivities over to, you know, a home game against a cellar dweller division team, even though they are a division rival. This is one of those games where we've seen the Falcons sort of fumble it in the past. And, you know, you sort of have to be on a mission at this point, having hopefully won the last few games. And it sort of has to be that mission of we have to be fully locked in down the stretch. And that stretch starts now in the double-digit weeks. And, you know, I would love to see the Falcons just go out there, absolutely pulverize them, take care of business, you know, maybe even have some of the starters resting in that fourth quarter. And I do think at this point, if the Falcons are above 500, it will probably help that the stadium will be packed for this game if they have, you know, won the last 3 or 4 games in a row, and that should sort of carry the team a little bit as well.
yeah, I would love to see that. And, you know, I don't think the Panthers are going to be like bad this year. I think they will take a step forward and be more competitive, but this is a team that the Falcons should be able to beat if they're actually serious, which I think we're all hoping, and based on what we've predicted so far, seems like we think the Falcons will be at least somewhat serious at this point in the schedule, as we all have them with a winning record.
The one
go ahead. Yeah.
I am worried about is the flight. It is a 6-hour time change to Germany. That's I don't know if the body's really going to be 100% ready, you know, by the next week. I think the rule of thumb is it takes 1 day for each hour of the time change for you to, like, you know, get used to it. So yeah, I'm sure it'll be a very groggy week of practice, and that's the one chance I think the Panthers have in this game.
Yeah,
but I'm still going with the win.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got Week 12 at the Saints, the first time the Falcons are going to play New Orleans this year. I think this is the year the Falcons got to destroy the Saints. Like, this Saints team, I think, will be very much the favorite to get the number 1 overall pick. They've got Tyler Shuck as sort of the I mean, I don't want to say unquestioned starter, but he's basically the unquestioned starter. I mean, they don't, like, we saw Spencer Rattler, that was not good. We've seen Jake Hayner, and that's not good. So they really don't have a choice other than to just throw Tyler Shuck to the Wolves behind a really, really, really old roster. They have their, like, speaking of concussion problems, like, Chris Olave is in the same boat as Tua or close to it. Rashid Shaheed can't stay healthy. They just don't really, they've lost a lot of depth due to their salary cap problems. They've lost starters. They've continued doubling down and extending guys because they just don't have a choice. Like, if they don't do that, then they just run out of cap space. So the roster's aging. They're going to have, I think, a day 3 rookie quarterback starting essentially week 1. I think by the time we get here, the Saints might have like one win. Now, the thing to always keep in mind is the Saints will treat this game like their Super Bowl. And the Falcons have to be cognizant of that. But, the Falcons should have swept the Saints last year. Like that really should have been something that they accomplished easily, if not for 4 missed field goals, right? So I think this continues the streak. For me, this will be game 5 in a row of a midseason win streak. And, a lot of that has to do with the schedule. But you got to beat up on this Saints. This is the year. You got to embarrass these guys. You got to punish them for their mistakes. So that's what I will that's what I'll be going with here. Eric, you feeling the same way about this one?
Look, man, don't play with your food. Okay?
Yeah.
Don't handle business. Let's move on to the next week. This Saints team is dreadful. And I know we talk every year about how bad the Saints may look on paper, but this is truly one of those seasons where I'm like, yo, they're not good. They are not good. Okay. They are, and if you listen to, or if you see Saints fans, they're optimistic. They're trying to talk themselves up, but it's like, what do you have to lean on? You're dealing with a rookie quarterback. You're dealing with an unexpected retirement in the middle of the offseason that you didn't calculate in. Then which forces you to take your rookie quarterback in Tyler Shuck that you probably wanted to sit a year, and now he's likely going to be the starter in week 1. And if he doesn't, then I don't really know how they're going to feel about that if Spencer Rattler is starting or Jake Haener is starting. Like they may be panicking a little bit. As you mentioned, they're getting up there in age, man. You're still trotting out DeMario Davis. They're still leaning on Cam Jordan to get after the quarterback, and he just had a career low in sacks this past season, I believe. This team is not good, man. What are we doing here? Not to mention, I don't even believe in their head coach. I didn't believe him as a play caller in Dallas. I didn't believe in him as a play caller with the Chargers, and both of those teams got rid of him in back-to-back seasons. He goes to Philly, he wins the Super Bowl, but let's be honest here. Okay? I don't know how much credit you're giving to Kellen Moore for that team last year, their off-season success, but I'm not giving him a whole lot, all right? So, I'm sorry. Don't play with your food, man. Handle business. Let's move on to next week.
Yeah. They're trying to gas it up, and it's not working. Yeah, they're trying to gas the Tyler Shuck, and yeah, I don't believe it. And yeah, Adnan, how do you feel about this one? You feel the same way?
Yeah, look, this has to be the year where you have to sweep the Saints. You have to retake the advantage in the all-time series history as well, because we just need that in Atlanta too. Look, honestly, if I was the Saints, this year would have been a blatant tanking season. Like, I would not have taken Shuck in the second round. I would have loaded this up with like a sort of futures draft, the way the Falcons sort of had last year. And then I would have, probably gone all in for Arch Manning next year. So I can see why they were pissed off about, using a high second rounder on Tyler Shuck, even though, it seems like their coaching staff believes in him. That was a shocking pick nonetheless. This is a retirement home of a team, and they have no other options because they're so far, they've kicked the can so far down the road that they can't really get out of it right now except for to continue extending and restructuring contracts. Now, the one thing I will say is this can get dangerous if the Falcons don't take it seriously, and if the Falcons sort of, as Eric puts it, play with their food, because the Saints are going to be trash this year. This game is going to be their Super Bowl. It's going to be in New Orleans. That place is going to be rocking because the Falcons are coming, and they are coming off of a bye week the week before. So I think they will put every single thing into this one game. the same way we saw it in New Orleans last season. And we saw the result of, what happened to the Falcons losing a very, very winnable game in New Orleans last year because they had some mental mistakes that you just can't have. And, I'm hoping that they've learned from that and that they are going to go into this game with the mindset of just taking care of business. And I hope that we absolutely embarrass them in New Orleans and that we absolutely embarrass them later on at home. Neither of these games should be one score games at the end of it. Like, this is one of those games where you have to go over there and you have to send a message.
Yeah. It would be nice to see the Falcons really take control of this rivalry and put the foot on the neck of the Saints this year and really give this team a thrashing that they've deserved for a while, let's be honest. So, all right, we got Week 13 at the Jets. Adnan, how are you feeling about this matchup? A very different-looking Jets team. Aaron Glenn's now in charge. Justin Fields at quarterback. Jets are it feels like the Falcons are playing a lot of teams with new quarterbacks or just kind of shifting situations this year, and the Jets are another one in that line. Maybe the only cold weather game of the season here.
Man, this schedule's it gets really light after
this is a nice stretch right here, actually. I'm liking this so far.
It's a hell of a stretch. Yeah, no, I'm taking a win over the Jets too. Like, no offense to the Jets, I think this is one of the worst teams on the schedule. Probably other than the Saints. I'm not really scared of it. Like, don't get me wrong, they have some pieces. They have Sauce Gardner. I think Breece Hall is better than what we saw last year. I think this could be a little bit of a bounce back season. Him with the dual threat of Justin Fields, but overall, I just don't see the talent in New York from an overall perspective. I mean, that team was in disarray last year. They were, the talk of the tabloids. They were, the talk of, the Aaron Rodgers fiasco. I will give Aaron Glenn a lot of credit for ridding themselves of that massive distraction and of doing so as soon as possible. I think Aaron Glenn he's a fine head coach, but I'm not a believer that Justin Fields is going to be the guy who gets it done over there. And yeah, overall, I think this should be a comfortable victory, even though it could be, in the cold and in the snow. But luckily, this is, probably the only cold game of the season, depending on what Foxborough's like in early November.
Yeah, the Jets are one of those teams. I'm just not really sure what to think. They just haven't really been able to get a lot of wins. That's kind of been their issue. I think they put together some compelling defenses, and I think this probably run-heavy offense with, Breece Hall, Justin Fields, Braylon Allen could be interesting. But at this point, by the time we actually get to this game, we'll have a better idea of how serious this matchup is going to be on both sides, because we're obviously making very positive assumptions about how the Falcons are going to be looking. But I just don't think that the Jets are going to be one of the major contenders this year. I do like Aaron Glenn, and I think he's going to get this team on the right track. I don't know if that's going to translate to wins right away. I do like Justin Fields, and I hope that he gets a serious shot here. They sort of build the offense to accommodate him and let him get rolling. But Justin Fields is also not the winningest quarterback. That it's funny, when he finally started to win football games, the Steelers promptly benched him. So interesting stuff there. But Eric, how do you feel about this Jets matchup?
Man, you know what? Going back to the point that was made about the Jets being in the headlines, 90% of that was because of one guy, and he's not going to be on that team going forward. And I agree with Adnan as well. I credit to Aaron Glenn for recognizing that and not buying into the fallacy that is Aaron Rodgers and saying, hey, we're better off without you. We don't need you. We don't need your attention. We're going to grow as a team. I personally am a little higher on the Jets than you guys are. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs this year, but I think they're definitely going to be a middle of the pack team. I think they do have some talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. This is a defense that was third overall last year. They gave up some points, but they were third overall, and they had some considerable injuries throughout the year. They lost Jermaine Johnson early in the year. You're still kind of sort of waiting on Will McDonald to round in the form, but I think Jermaine Johnson was definitely coming into his own. Quentin Williams is Quentin Williams. You know what? Sauce Gardner has been solid as a corner so far. He's not really putting up these gaudy interception numbers, but you know, I think this is a team over the last couple of years that, whether it was Saleh or even Jeff Ulbrich, like they were able to squeeze out, you know, some element of production on a roster that desperately that needed some talent over the last few years. Again, I'm a little higher on them. I'm not picking them to make the playoffs, but I think they'll be 7-10, 8 or 9, right in that area this year. And I think Justin Fields can be a solid contributor. I don't think he's going to be that guy that's going to be the difference maker for him, but with Brees, with Braylon Allen, with Garrett Wilson, he's got some stuff to work with there a little bit. He has more to work with in New York than he did last year in Pittsburgh. And I think his start to the season last year in Pittsburgh was not as bad to warrant a benching into Russell Wilson.
Yeah,
I think his
Ford too. Yeah.
Right. I think his start was pretty solid. You wanted to see some improvements, but it was early in the year. You was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they trip up here, guys.
Okay. No, that's fair. I mean, I know you've had them like winning a lot of games, so I think it's also like it's probably not going to continue forever, you know. Like, and I get like
at this point they'll be 8-4, so it's like, okay, we tripped up in New York, it's fine.
It's a road game, maybe it's snowing, you know, it's cold.
Right. So I have them tripping up here. I think this is one of those games that we were alluding to where they are going to have some losses that are going to make us scratch our heads. Like, why do we lose this game?
Could be one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this definitely could be one.
Yeah. Well, my slip-up game is this week at Week 14 against the Seahawks. I don't know what it is with this Seahawks team. The Falcons just don't beat this Seahawks team. Like, they just don't win. Like, they sometimes will play them well. Sometimes they'll play them terribly, and it'll end up close. They just have a hard time getting across the finish line against the Seahawks. And that's kind of how I see this game playing out, is they'll go on this great 6-game win streak. They kind of clean up, but then they come back home after a 2-game road stand and just drop a big stinky one against the Seahawks. Not that they get blown out or anything crazy, but just like, this is that game to me that it's like, wow, okay, I guess we're doing this. You know, just to make us remember that we can't trust this team. You know, they can't, you know, after I say that after they win 6 games in a row. So, you know, it's like, okay, I don't think anyone's going to be panicking too much, but this is the one, like, much like what Eric had last week. I think Week 14 against Seahawks is where I see them kind of slip up here. Yeah, Adnan, what do you think about the Seahawks matchup?
Yeah, I don't like that we're picking all of the same games exactly. Like,
it makes me uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it. I know that, you know, some of the viewers have criticized us for being too in agreement with some stuff. So, you know, we're not helping that case here. But yeah, I have them losing to the Seahawks as well. I mean, last year that was one of the games that they lost handily. Like, the Seahawks blew the Falcons out at home last season. And look, I get it. This game will be at home as well. Seattle is coming, you know, from the West Coast, but I really like the Seahawks team. And I don't think it'll be a slip-up game to lose to them. I don't think there's going to be any shame in losing to the Seahawks this year. Look, I've talked my trash about about Sam Darnold last year. Not saying he's a bad quarterback. I just didn't think he was, you know, that Pro Bowl level player that we saw all season. And I don't think he will be that in Seattle, but I think he's still going to be, you know, a fine quarterback. He'll be good enough to get them some wins. Jackson Smith and Jigba was really coming into his own last year. I know they lost DK Metcalf, but they did bring in Cooper Kupp. They brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling for, the speed factor. I really like their running back duo, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, both guys that they spent, I think, second rounders on each of them in back-to-back years. We saw what Kenneth Walker did a couple of years ago. He was very, very strong. And then, on defense, I'm a big fan of Rick Woolen, Boy Mafe, Leonard Williams. Obviously, last year was, a game breaker. And I think Seattle comes in, and I think they do win this game, and it won't be a game where I'll be panicking at all. I think this will be one of those where if they lose, I'll be like, okay, yeah, on to the next. I get it.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks are going to be a tough out, but how do you sort of see the Seahawks team, Eric?
I have them winning here.
Okay, yeah.
I have them going into Seattle and getting a win. This was one of those losses last year that definitely left us puzzled because, they're good in Seattle's good in certain spots, but you definitely got that feel early in the year that they were kind of sort of trying to figure themselves out as a team. And right now, like I get Sam Darnold had a hell of a 2024 season. Exceeded pretty much everyone's expectations. But I don't know if he follows up on it. Like it's one thing to do that with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. It's another thing to do that with a Cooper Kupp who is showing the signs of decline. I don't know what Cooper Kupp is going to be there this year. And I think they're hoping that it's Cooper Kupp from, 20 whatever. But I don't know if that guy's here anymore. And he's had some lower leg injuries over the last couple of years that has really slowed him down and has really affected his production. And again, I don't know which one they're going to get. Thankfully, AJ Terrell doesn't have to see DK Metcalf because we know how that always goes. And not to mention, I don't know where this team is really going to get after the quarterback consistently enough. They're bringing in a guy in DeMarcus Lawrence who obviously, he's definitely slowed down as well, but they have him listed as a starter on the depth chart right now. We'll see what they get from Derek Hall in year 3. The former edge rusher out of Auburn, Rick Woolen he had a tough season last year. He gave us some plays. It was one of those seasons where it's like, okay, you didn't expect this. He didn't look awful, but man, there were some moments where he really I know for sure he gave up the game-winning touchdown in overtime against the Rams at home last year in a one-on-one situation with Demarcus Robinson. Devon Witherspoon is their best player on defense, in my opinion. We'll see what the rookie and Nick Emanwari gives them, but I don't know what to make of this Seattle team. They're good in certain spots, but if Kupp is not the Kupp that we expect, and if Kenneth Walker cannot give them a healthy season, which he has had some issues giving them a healthy season, this team is going to be in the middle of the pack, in my opinion, especially with still the uncertainty at quarterback in Sam Darnold.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. I think this is a really interesting team, and we'll see sort of how they develop this year. But I do think they're one to watch, especially the defense. Like, Mike McDonald. There's a lot of Mikes out there. He's someone that I really always respected from his time and with the Ravens, and I think last year he got that Seattle defense, even despite some of the personnel issues that you mentioned, he got them playing well towards the end of the season.
They're playing really good football. Yep.
I think at the end of the day, it might be the Seahawks defense that's kind of their engine, and I think a lot of people aren't expecting that given how they've sort of been the last several years. But yeah, I think the question mark is Darnold. Can he keep it going? That is not anywhere close to as good of a situation as it was in Minnesota. And I don't know, the Cooper Kupp really moves the needle for them, now that they've lost DK Metcalf. So we'll have to see, but that is a really interesting one for sure. All right, penultimate primetime game, and we'll try to get through these last couple pretty cool. One of them is a repeat matchup with the Saints, and I think we all know how that's going to go. But yeah, we don't have to talk about that one. So we got 3 more. Penultimate primetime game at the Bucs on Thursday Night Football. This is a tough one. I do think I'm not gonna have the Falcons sweeping the Bucs again, like on paper. I just think it's tough to do that. I think the Falcons were lucky to accomplish that last year, and I loved it. But you're coming off what I think will be a tough game against the Seahawks, going on a short week to go on the road for Thursday Night Football, and that is a pretty much universally a recipe for a loss. Like road Thursday Night Football games are extremely unkind in terms of the win-loss record for the road team. So I think this is going to be an L for me. I think this would be a split with the Bucs. I think that's fine for the Falcons. And by now we'll obviously know like how serious the Bucs are as a contender. Are they like just an NFC South contender? Are they an NFC contender? Like what is this team looking like? We'll have a better idea. But I still think it would be a lot to expect the Falcons to be able to sweep this Bucs team again. Yeah. And Eric, I assume seems like you feel maybe similarly with this one as well. But
Yeah, I think they're splitting here. I got them having a loss here. Both teams are coming off Sunday matchups, of course, but the Bucs are coming off a Sunday matchup at home against the Saints, which they will probably put away early and have Baker and those guys probably sit a quarter. So it's both teams are coming off short weeks, but they're going to have the luxury of playing a powder puff team, FCS team, and the New Orleans Saints. It's I am interested in knowing like where this team physically is going to be after that game in Seattle. Like even though I had them picking up a win in Seattle always plays. Say again.
They're playing in Atlanta against Seattle.
Yeah, I think I have that as a home game too. So that's not. Yeah.
But I'm saying like I've always just wondering how this team is going to look. And I still, even though I have them beating Seattle, I don't think it's going to be an easy win. It's never an easy game against Seattle. It's always a physical matchup, especially with what they have on both sides of the ball. So I'm kind of sort of interested in seeing where this team is going to be physically after that Seattle game. But I think they split here with the Bucs, and I'm going to give the dub here to Tampa.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Adnan, how are you feeling about this rematch with the Bucs, the penultimate primetime game?
Yeah, no, this will be one of those where we're really getting up for it. Like, it's gonna, who knows, maybe be a chance to put away the division. Maybe it'll be a neck-and-neck game where this game really decides who gets into the driver's seat down the stretch. Ultimately, I think Tampa will take it. I mean, the reasons you guys listed out, it's difficult going on the road on Thursday night, especially, very late in the season. The Falcons, will be even more probably fatigued given the fact that the bye week is so early on in week 5. So this is week 15. This will be their 10th game in a row, and on a short week against a Bucs team that's not traveling, they can stay in Tampa. I think their play calling will be in a bit more of a rhythm than they would in week 1. Chris Godwin should be back. Emeka Egbuka should be contributing more at this point than he would be in week 1. And yeah, overall, I don't think there's any shame in splitting with the Bucs this year. And I do think that Tampa will unfortunately take this one.
Yeah, we hate to say it, but I think predicting a split with Tampa is pretty reasonable. Week 16 at the Cardinals. Cardinals are kind of a weird team. Now this is late in the year, so Kyler Murray's probably playing Call of Duty at this point, so maybe we don't have to worry too much about this matchup. But it is an interesting team. They really haven't been able to translate being interesting into being good yet. But I do have the Falcons winning on the road here in Week 16 to be the final road game of the regular season. So, Adnan, what do you think about the Cardinals on the road, Week 16?
Yeah, I have them taking the double in Arizona. Luckily, you're going to play a December game on the road. You want it to be in Arizona when it comes to weather-wise in that dome. Right after Tampa Bay, actually. So that's a nice little quirk in the schedule. I'm high on Kyler Murray, maybe higher on Kyler Murray than most. I think that Marvin Harrison will take a big step up this year. I think he had a disappointing rookie season relative to expectations last year. Overall, I just don't look at this Cardinals team as one that has they don't have enough talent. Like I'm not. I just don't see it overall. Like they have some pieces for sure. James Conner, I don't know if he's even going to be healthy at this point. He normally always picks up an injury midseason. Last year was a healthier season than most, and I think the Falcons go into Arizona and win a game off 10 days rest, off that mini bye after that Thursday night, where I think that will aid them as well.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Eric, how are you feeling about this late season Cardinals matchup?
Oh man. I got a loss here. Surprisingly, yeah.
Slip up game. Yeah. This is the slip up game.
this is where the point that Adnan made about like just the point of the season where you had the early bye week and you had a 2.5 month stretch of games. I think these 2 weeks here at Tampa, at Arizona is where we see that come into play. We're like, yeah, this team, they look a little tired, even with the mini bye. I agree with Adnan as well. I'm a little higher on Kyler Murray than a lot. I think Marvin Harrison is the kind of receiver that has given AJ Terrell some issues in the past, and I think this could be a season where Marvin Harrison does take that step forward. This is a team that I get there's probably lower expectations across the board for them in terms of just, overall season production. But I like some of the moves that they made. They brought in Josh Sweat, they brought in Calais Campbell, brought in Dalvin Thomas, and you drafted Will Johnson as well to be your number one corner. I do like the pieces that they added. Oh, of course, and Walter Nolan in the first round as well. I do like the pieces that they added this offseason. I don't think it's going to be enough for them to be a serious contender in the NFC West. But again, I look at this team kind of the same way that I look at the same way that I look at the Jets, the same way that I look at the Patriots, that I think this team is going to be better than in terms of record than a lot of people get credit for. Not picking them to make the playoffs, but they're just going to be that scrappy team that you're like, damn, we have to go up against them this week. And it's not going to be an easy dub. It's not going to be an easy game by any means. So I have the Falcons going on the road here, getting a loss, and falling to 9-6 at this point in the season. I'm pretty sure there's some individuals that are starting to panic a little bit this time of year.
I think if the Falcons are at 9 wins at this point, everyone's probably pretty happy. It's like, okay, we've gotten the winning record, the elusive winning record. Now we just got to get it done. Like, we just got to, like, at this point, it's like, yeah, I think at this point we're all more or less at 9-6. So it's like, okay, we got over the bridge. Now we just need to not fall off. Now we just need to like get off the bridge successfully, stick the landing here. And that's easier said than done. But, I think we all probably are in agreement that 10 wins should be enough to make the playoffs in the NFC. So we got to find one. And there's 2 games left on the schedule. I think, more than likely, I think we're all probably picking the Saints. Even if I think maybe the Falcons are resting starters in a nice world here, I would still pick the Falcons to win, even if they're resting starters.
Wow. Okay.
I'm going all in on Saints hate this year. This is the year for that. But the one we have to actually consider is against the Rams on Monday Night Football, final primetime game of the regular season for Atlanta. This is a big game, obviously, potentially for playoff standing. They could be fighting with the Rams for a wild card spot, or this could be obviously a critical game in terms of the seeding. It's a tough game. Monday Night Football. It is at home, so that helps. The Rams, I think, have aspirations this year. Obviously, the Falcons would love to get as many wins as possible to make sure they're not giving a big pick away. But, Adnan, what do you think about this Rams primetime matchup?
I have this one as a loss. Okay. Home, Monday Night Football. I really like the Rams. I really like what they did. I mean, I think what we saw from them down the stretch last year is more so what they actually are versus the struggles we saw earlier on in the season. I know they did have some big injuries. Puka Nacua missed a lot of that, early part of the season. Tyler Higbee was out. I really like the weapons around Matthew Stafford. Kyron Williams is, gets the job done. Puka Nacua, I think, is one of the best wide receivers in the league. I like them adding Devontae Adams. I think he's a hell of a number 2. I think Matthew Stafford is, he's still a fine quarterback. I think he'll get them to where they want to be, to where they need to be. I still think that Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the league, and then they have some nice pieces on defense. Jared Verse last year was, I think, the rookie of the year. Cam Curl. It's I would love to sort of stick it to the Rams in this one, given the fact that they do have our draft pick, but I just have too much respect for, Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford and all that they, the way they looked just down that stretch last year. And, I do have this being a loss to send the Falcons to 9-7 and to make it so that they cannot rest anyone against the Saints. I don't think they would either way, even if they won this game, because I think they'd still be fighting for seeding at that point.
Yeah, more than likely, I agree with you there, and I'm going to have this as a loss too. I think this is potentially a really tough opponent. If I could trade this loss with a win somewhere else, I definitely would take that because I think this will be more important for the seeding. But at this point, just trying to predict, I think this is one of the more likely losses on the schedule, just given the quality of opponent. But Eric, are you sort of thinking the same thing there, or where do you land on this primetime Rams matchup?
I'm taking the dub, guys.
All right, big dubs.
The Falcons look at this game. They got a little taste of this of a game of this magnitude last year with the Sunday night game at Washington, where it was just one of those games where they kind of sort of walked in as like the walking wounded, and they played better than a lot of people thought. They probably should have won the game in the eyes of some. I think they take those memories and they apply it to this game. There's some things on the line there. Of course, playoff seeding could be in play here, but of course also it's Raheem Morris going up against the Rams, a team that he is familiar with. There's some guys on that defensive side of the ball that he knows, that he coached himself, and he also spent 3 years going up against Matthew Stafford every day in practice. So I think he also has that in his back pocket as well. He knows the ins and outs. He knows, what it takes to kind of sort of get Matthew Stafford off his game. Now, I would not be surprised if this time of the year the Rams are one of the better teams in the league, because normally that's what they've been. They've been a slow starter, and then once Matthew Stafford hits his stride halfway in the year, the Rams are the team that you don't want to see in the playoffs. But I think this year, this is the win. This is the game that we look at and we say, okay, the Falcons grew up at some point in this season. I think it's this game. I think they, on the road, under the lights, at home, under the lights, against a Rams team that's going to be good, that's probably going to make the playoffs this year, but I think they prove a statement. And I think they get a huge win here on Monday Night Football and set themselves up quite nicely for the playoffs.
Yeah, that would be really exciting. I think if we see this team outperform expectations and be better than sort of the baseline, and remember, folks, anyone who thinks we're being negative, the Falcons were at 7.5 wins on most books. It might have gone up since the draft. I'm not sure, but we're all at this point,
the highest I've seen it.
Yeah, so we're all at least a game above. Eric is 2 games above. Adnan and I are 1 game above right now going into this Saints matchup, which I think, at the end of the day, we'd probably just call that a dub. But I think if we're looking to see them overperform massively, they really hit and are really competing at a level we weren't expecting, the Rams game here and the Vikings week 2 are 2 of those games where we maybe, if they're better than expected, they steal wins, in week 2 and here in week 17. And that's what kind of catapults them to a better record. Because I still think they'll have those slip-up games. I don't think they're going to be immune to those. They're not this well-oiled machine that's not going to have the slip-up games. But yeah, I mean, in terms of week 18 against the Saints, it's the Saints at home. I will. It doesn't matter what the scenario is. I will always pick the Falcons to beat the Saints at home. It's just something that you have to do as a Falcons fan. Okay, can't pick the Saints at home to have a loss. So to me, that will give the Falcons a 10-7 record And I hope that will be enough to win the NFC South. But I do think that will be enough to make the playoffs in the NFC. Adnan, where do you land on this Saints game? And how are you feeling about your final record prediction?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a huge game going into it. I think the division's still going to be in play. I don't know if they'll be in the driver's seat or if it'll be Tampa. At the very least, a playoff spot will probably be in play, and I think the Falcons will be completely locked in here. The Saints will come into it wanting to play spoiler, but by week 18, just like week 18 last year, I think the Saints will be battered and broken at this point. It's a very old roster. I'd be hard-pressed to see all of those names like Kamara, Cam Jordan, DeMario Davis playing all 18 or all 17 games. Who knows what we'll get when it comes to Tyler Shuck. If it's still going to be him, it's going to be Rattler, Hayner, some other fourth name that we don't know about. It could go any sort of way. And I do think the Falcons, this game will sort of be the coronation for them. Beating the Saints at home in front of your home fans to make the playoffs, to finally get over that hurdle that's been plaguing you since 2017. I think this will be one of those games where it'll be sort of a party atmosphere by the end of the afternoon, and it's going to be one of those where the party continues, into the afternoon and evening in the Benz and in downtown Atlanta. And I don't think I would rather have it any other way than to sort of clinch the division / clinch a playoff spot than beating the Saints at home.
Yeah, I think so. And so that would have you also finish 10-7. And then Eric, what's your final prediction here, week 18?
11-6.
Yeah, let's go.
Mm-hmm. I again, last year I had this team winning 10 games. I felt good about it. I do think they took a step forward in terms of just overall talent this offseason. There's plenty of question marks. Don't get us wrong. There's still some things about this team that we still need to get answered, that we still need to get figured out. They're young across the board, but the floor has risen in Atlanta. And I think this draft class was a good part of that. The talent is there. It's just a matter of getting the talent on the same page and winning football games at this point. And I think they set themselves up last year with that. And this is why you kind of sort of look back at the pick of taking Penix and saying, man, it was shot down the moment it happened. But now looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, Kirk didn't have the season that we expected, along with the fact that place yourself in this draft class, if the Falcons needed a quarterback in this draft class, how much trouble they would have been. You look at it and you say, okay, you know what? They took steps forward, and at some point it's going to add up. And I think this is the season where we see the Falcons team take a mature step forward and win 11 games, win the division, and we'll see what they do when they get in the postseason.
Yeah, it's exciting. So we each at this point are thinking that the Falcons will improve, get that elusive winning record, and Eric, if they didn't make the playoffs at 11-6, that would be very, very unlikely. That would be weird. So I think that's very likely, and then I think pretty safe bet of making the playoffs at 10-7 as well. Hopefully winning the division as well. But we all think this team is going to get better. Yeah, we all think this team is going to get better at the very least. Get that elusive winning record, get into the playoffs, start to right the ship here. And we'll see what happens in the playoffs. But I'm not going to make any playoff predictions at this point. We're way too far out from that type of stuff. But it'll be interesting to see how we're feeling about this team when December actually rolls around, because the last several years it's been not great, to say the least. Got a couple questions here before we wrap up. Furball with the $2 asking, do we really trust Jeff Ulbrich? I trust Jeff Ulbrich as much as anyone, right? Yeah, I mean, I guess I do. I'm fine with Jeff Ulbrich. Like, I'm not worried he's going to have this like defense playing terribly or something. Like, I think he's very much an adult defensive coordinator who's going to scheme up maybe a fairly basic scheme, but hopefully the guys in it will be playing, fast and physical, as DQ would say, and it'll be okay. So that's sort of my take on it. But
I mean, I'm not the guy that's going to sit here and say that it was his fingerprints all over the Jets defense. You know, Robert Saleh did have a considerable amount of input when it came to that. But and I think the same thing is going to be in this situation as well in Atlanta. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say like the defense is all Ulbricht's. I do think Raheem is going to, you know, step in when need be, and he's going to give his insight, and he's going to make some tweaks and things of that nature going forward. But if I trust him in that, I trust Ulbricht in that aspect. I don't trust him in a situation like last year with the Jets, where it was like you had a mid-season firing and you gave him the entire team and said, "Hey, do something with it." That I understand. So I think Ulbricht is going to be fine. I think he's in an environment, a controlled environment that he's familiar with. He's around guys on the staff that he's coached with before. I think he's going to be okay, honestly.
Yeah. Cool. I agree. I think so as well. Then we got George Costanza with the $2.83 donation. Thank you, George.
Jesus Christ.
He wanted to get that in, I'm sure. George says, I have us at 13-4. Whoa. Big dubs for George. I think we run the table at the end of the season. I think we do lose to the Bills. I think we do get that Commanders upset, and we will blast the 49ers. I think we'll probably drop one somewhere late in the season. Also, George wants an update on the chocolate Twizzlers, Adnan. Have you secured the chocolate Twizzlers? Do you have a review ready at this time?
I looked for them at Lidl.
Yep.
And I could not find them.
Okay. So we're still TBD on the chocolate Twizzlers, George. But
they're not easy to find. It's not like a regular Twizzler.
Yeah, it's like a special thing. I don't know where we can get that. We'll have to get Evan on it.
It was even like a limited edition type
Maybe
thing.
it was, yeah. Adnan seems to have the connect for these things, so we'll see if he can.
Chocolate Twizzlers.
Yeah, I agreed.
I'm not a fan of Twizzlers, but chocolate Twizzlers is like,
I don't know.
Do we need it?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that would be.
No, I mean, I'd be down. Like, I would eat it on the show.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's.
Or you would have to.
Yeah.
I would give like a real-time review. I'd get the pickle slushy on the show.
Yeah, we did the pickle slushy. That's right. Yeah, it was.
So what?
The pickle slushy. It was like a Sonic thing, right?
Yeah, it was a Sonic thing. Yeah, I got it right before the show on a Wednesday and had it in front of everyone. I think it's one of our shows. Like, it was like probably 100 shows ago or something.
Yep.
It
was not great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I would have. It's just. It's harder to find than like I don't even know if it's still out there.
Yep. Yes, some of us did the pickle slushy. Yeah, I mean, you know, I did.
Man,
yeah, but
you are a better man than me.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not doing that.
I'm a better man than Kevin too, because he flaked on it.
I did flake on it big time. So yeah. Yeah,
I don't blame you.
I just made Adnan do it. That's the co-host duty to drink the pickle slushy. But yes, it was a fun show. Thank you guys so much for joining us here tonight to get the second part of our season predictions. We're all predicting good things for this Falcons team at this time. You know, reserve the right to change our answers if this team, you know, disappoints us once again. But fun stuff. Excited to see where this team goes and how this team evolves over the rest of the offseason. We got lots more stuff coming your way. We're going to have fun show that I did recorded today with JP Acosta of SB Nation, going over why you should be excited about Michael Penix this year. You can check out his article on SBNation.com, breaking that down as well if you're looking for immediate takes on Penix. And then we will have the last bastion of real news, mandatory minicamp next week, of Myles Garrett from the Fox station in Atlanta coming on to give us some live minicamp takes next Wednesday, and then we'll have Daniel Flick coming on as well later in the week to give us his takes from mandatory minicamp, and then we will have to subsist on those little breadcrumbs for the remainder of June and half of July, but that's okay. We'll get it done. We got some guests lined up. We got some fun stuff coming your way during the Dead Zone, so stay tuned. But thanks again to Eric Robinson for coming on. He's at _Eric_Robinson. Anything else you'd like to let the people know about Eric before we sign off?
Falcoholic, man. That's where it's the same plug every episode. Falcoholic, man. That's where you need to be.
Absolutely. Well, I can get down with that plug. It's a great plug. Of course, Adnan Ikic with us as well. He's at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything you're working on you want to let the people know about?
Yeah, I'm also going to plug the Falcoholic here, and Yeah, just our. I'm also going to celebrate the fact that we are one more week through the dead period. So another. Well, the only unfortunate thing is we've sort of used up the big guns at this point with the schedule prediction. So I have no idea where it goes from here.
Yeah. Yep. So
It's
yeah,
tough this time of year, man.
It is. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna get through it together, guys. We're gonna have a lot of fun here, and break down some fun stuff. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the Falcoholic Live and 30 Birds and Brews podcast. Give us that like, give us that subscription, give us that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you want to support the show, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live, or you can sign up here with the YouTube channel memberships. But until next time, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We will see you. Have a great night, folks.